ज्ञानातिमिरन्दस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामिनीति नामिने। नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्यदेशतारिणे। श्रीकृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानन्द श्री अद्वैता गदाधर श्रीवासदि गौर भक्तवृन्द। श्रीकृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानन्द श्री अद्वैता गदाधर श्रीवासदि गौर भक्तवृन्द। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Rama
Vishnupad Padamhansa Pariprajakacharya Ashtotar Satashi Srimad A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda Ki Jai Namacharya Sridhar Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem Sakaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai Sri Sri Radha Krishna Gop Gopinath Sham Kund Radha Kuni Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai Navadip Dham Ki Jai Jagannath Puri Ki Jai Ganga Mai Ki Jai Jamana Mai Ki Jai Tulsi Devi Ki Jai Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Samaveta Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bol. Thank you all for coming, especially Jwarjit Prabhu, Meena Dasi, and all the devotees. We're continuing with Chaitanya Caritamrta. For those who are new, our rule is that at any time feel free to raise your hand with a question or a comment, or feel free just to jump in. Unmute yourself and jump in. And that's how we do things around here.
And also to please not to write in the chat box while Maharaj is reading from the chat box.
Yes, that would be helpful. Thank you. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Welcome also to Lalit Prasad Prabhu and everyone.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Hare Krishna. Jive Sakshat Nahitate Guru Chaita Rupe Siksha Guru Hoy Krishna Mahanta Swarupe. Since one cannot visually experience the presence of the Super Soul, he appears before us as a liberated devotee. Such a spiritual master is none other than Krishna himself. Om Jnana Timidantasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Sthapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupakada Mahyam Datati Shapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Jatapadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Shagrajatam Sahagana Raganatan Vitam Stam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savatutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Shahagana Lolita Sri Vishakhan Vitamscha. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindho Dina Bandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kamshana Gaurangi Radhe Brindavaneshwari Prasad Bhanu Sujay Devi Namami Hori Priye Vanshako Patarubhyascha Kripa Sindho Pyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. In this section of Caitanya Caritamrta, as we may recall, Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami is explaining the various tattvas, starting with Guru Tattva. The Guru Tattva, the spiritual master, there's the initiating spiritual master and the instructing spiritual master. And after discussing the initiating guru, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami has been talking about the Shiksha Guru, instructing spiritual master. Of course, here the verses will apply equally to both the Diksha Guru and the Siksha Guru. Elsewhere, Kaviraj Goswami has already said that there's no difference. They're equal, identical and equal manifestations of Lord Krishna. And Krishna himself acts as Siksha Guru. But since one can't visually experience the presence of the Supersoul, Krishna in the heart, he appears before us as a liberated devotee. Such a spiritual master is none other than Krishna himself. Purport. It is not possible for a conditioned soul to directly meet Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But if one becomes a sincere devotee and seriously engages in devotional service, Lord Krishna sends an instructing spiritual master to show him favor and invoke his dormant propensity for serving the Supreme. The preceptor appears before the external senses of the fortunate conditioned soul, and at the same time, the devotee is guided from within by the Chaitya Guru, Krishna, who is seated as the spiritual master within the heart of the living entities. We've discussed before, two things. One, I've mentioned before that Srila Prabhupada, in the purport to one verse of Bhagavad Gita, as it is in the original abridged edition, on the page proofs where it had said something to the effect that what the devotee does is right because Krishna guides him from within. What he does is guided by Krishna from within. And Srila Prabhupada added on the page proofs and confirmed by the spiritual master. So the reception of the messages from Krishna may be impaired by our dirty hearts. But when the spiritual master appears, or when Krishna appears in the external form of the instructing spiritual master, then we're in a better situation. We're using our ears and not depending on internal guidance, which may be clouded by our own imperfections. Of course, what we hear even from the instructing spiritual master can be clouded by our own imperfections, by our mental speculations, by our own motivated ideas. But at least the process is simple. We simply have to hear, to come in contact with the super soul. What is that? Chitatmana prashantasya paramatma samahita. In the Bhagavad Gita it said that one who's controlled his senses and become peaceful has already reached the super soul. But to do that is no small trick. So it's Krishna finally, who's the instructing spiritual master, the initiating spiritual master, the spiritual master in the heart. Krishna is doing everything, but he does it sometimes personally and sometimes through his agent, the devotee. All right, are there some questions or comments?
Yes, Maharaj.
Okay, Vijay Krishna asks, related to a conditioned soul being not capable of meeting Krishna directly, what is the meaning of the word conditioned in the context of this sentence? Conditioned like contaminated? Contaminated by what? Yes, contaminated. Conditioned means contaminated by what? By the modes of material nature, goodness, passion, and ignorance, and accordingly by lust, by greed. So a cleansing process is needed to become liberated. Tada rajas tamo bhava kamalopadi astriye. Chete tyranavidham stitam sattve prasidati. Evam prasana manaso bhagavat bhakti yogata. Bhagavat tattva vijnanam mukta sangasya jayate. We need to be freed from the modes of passion and ignorance, come to the mode of goodness, become happy-minded and Krishna conscious. Then there's some question, then there's some possibility of meeting Krishna. But otherwise, in the conditional state, we can't expect that. Tulsi Priya.
Yes, Maharaj, thank you. My question is, as far as not being able to see the super soul, is that a particular impediment that spiritual practitioners face in Kali Yuga nowadays, or is it something that's always the case? Because we hear about the yogis who meditate on Paramatma. Dhruva Maharaj got a brief glimpse of Paramatma. So I'm wondering what that's being applied to.
I was just hearing this morning from Hari Parshad Prabhu that evidence from Chaitanya Charitamrta and from Srila Sanatana Goswami, I think, that in Kali Yuga, Krishna is not visible. That we can't expect to see Krishna face to face in Kali Yuga. But one can see Krishna in the heart, premanjanat churita bhakti vilochanena, by pure devotional service, by love for Krishna. So Krishna is visible in previous ages to the yogis. Dhyana vastata tadgatena manasa pashyanti yam yogina. The yogis see Krishna within their hearts, but their process is long and arduous. So the devotee in Kali Yuga can also see Krishna within his heart, and the process is more simple to chant Hare Krishna and engage in devotional service, especially through the chanting of the holy name. Is that okay? Does that answer your question?
Thank you very much. Yes, it does.
Okay. Kendra Prabhu says, in my experience, I've found that instructing spiritual masters are not at all limited to those devotees from whom one may have formally or informally accepted as instructing spiritual masters. I have frequently addressed my wife as the all-pervading super wife, for example. Well, my goodness, that's a class in itself. The all-pervading super wife tattva. But yes, first of all, it's definitely not limited to those whom one has formally accepted. There are so many devotees from whom we may learn. Yes, there's so many devotees from whom we may learn, respecting them as representatives of Krishna. Practically, we can learn something from all the devotees, or we hear that the Brahmin was saying that he's learned something even from the animals. I've learned this from this animal, that from that animal. So in so many ways, we can learn from Krishna. But especially there may be some prominent a devotee who figures prominently in one's spiritual life, giving instructions that lead one strongly on the path of Krishna consciousness. So he's generally referred to as Shiksha Guru, and there may be many of them. The Diksha Guru can only be one, but the Shiksha Guru, one may have many. And yes, it's not limited, as you say, that it has to be a formal arrangement. Generally, it's not formal. Sikshas, the relationship is not so solemnized by formalities, but it develops by instruction and by hearing and following. More on that, Nikendra Prabhu? Okay. Tulsi Priya, my husband has been deprived of his association in this time of COVID, so he's making the use of best use of a bad bargain. Okay. The super wife has spoken. Shall we continue? Tata tu sangam utstrijya satsu sajjeta buddhiman santa evasya chindanti mano vyasangam uktipi. Therefore, one should therefore avoid bad company and associate only with devotees. With their realized instructions, such saints can cut the knot, connecting one with activities unfavorable to devotional service. Purport. This verse, which appears in Srimad Bhagavatam 11:26-26, was spoken by Lord Krishna to Uttava in the text known as the Uttava Gita. The discussion relates to the story of Pururava and the heavenly courtesan Urvashi. When Urvashi left Pururava, he was deeply affected by the separation and had to learn how to overcome his grief. Welcome, welcome.
There was some difference.
Hmm?
There was a little bit of difference.
Hmm. It is indicated that to learn the transcendental science, it is imperative that one avoid the company of undesirable persons and always seek the company of saints and sages who are able to impart lessons of transcendental knowledge. This is crucial. A satsanga tyag, a Vaishnavachar, that will be explained later in the purport. Tata dusangam utstrijya. Dusanga means association, and dusanga means bad association. A satsanga tyag, that Chanakya Pandit also says the same thing. We should give up bad association and accept good association. This is such an important principle In the original instructions tacked to the wall at 26 Second Avenue, Srila Prabhupada wrote among the directions for his earliest disciples, should not associate extensively with non-devotees. It's quoted in Nectar of Devotion that association is like a crystal, which reflects whatever comes before it. So it's common. If we associate with thieves, we'll become thieves. If we associate with lowlifes, we'll become contaminated and become lowlifes also. And if we associate with sadhus, we can be elevated. So on the one side, utsrijya du sangam, we should give up bad association. It's so important to do that. I should also mention that for those who are raising children, bad association is so corrosive. So corrosive. And it's everywhere in the material society. It's an association, it's a society for bad association. We have an international society for Krishna consciousness. And beyond that, there's a global society for dusanga, bad association. So we should be very careful about it. Satsu sajjeta, Buddhiman, an intelligent person, Buddhiman, should seek out the association of sadhus. Santa evasya, eva, emphatically, these saintly persons, chindanti, will cut mano vi asana, that's wrong, uktibi, mana vi asangam, uktibi, by their instructions, by their words, they'll cut off the attachments within the mind, the unwanted things, the things that are opposed to progress in devotional service. The potent words of such realized souls penetrate the heart, thereby eradicating all misgivings accumulated through years of undesirable association. For a neophyte devotee, there are two kinds of persons whose association is undesirable. One, gross materialists who constantly engage in sense gratification, and two, unbelievers who do not serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but serve their senses and their mental whims in terms of their speculative habits. Intelligent persons seeking transcendental realization should very scrupulously avoid their company. Asat Sangha Tyag E Vaishnavachar. One householder devotee asked Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, what should be the behavior of a Vaishnav? And the Lord replied in this way, Asat Sangha Tyag E Vaishnavachar. This is the behavior of a Vaishnav, that he gives up bad association. What is bad association? Stri Sangi Eka Sadhu Krishna Bhakta. Those who are too attached to sense gratification, especially Stri Sangi, those who are attached to women for sexual enjoyment, and Krishna Abhakta, those who are opposed to devotional service or averse to devotional service, unbelievers who don't serve the Lord, but serve their senses and speculative habits. Their association is And we've seen it again and again. Somewhat, it can be gross, it can be subtle, but when we associate with materialistic people of this kind, then our minds become affected. The association is explained by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur that it means intimate association, friendly association, association in which we reveal our minds. The routine, superficial association is less problematic. You know, we get on a bus, the bus driver is not a devotee, we say good morning, he says good morning. That's not going to kill us. But the association of persons who are materialistic, they want to be our friends, they want to tell us about something about women, something about the dealings of men and women, something about something conveying their realizations about sense enjoyment. That association is poisonous, and we should be very, very careful to avoid it. Similarly, Krishna Bhakta, those who are thoroughgoing materialists, can damage the heart of the aspiring devotee. So we should be very careful about this. There's a question in the chat box. The Lord appears before us as a liberated devotee. So the Siksha Guru should be liberated. Yes, he should be liberated. And what liberated consists of course, is a long discussion. From one point of view, a devotee is beyond liberation. Liberation is the small stuff. To understand that I'm not this body, to understand that I don't belong to this material world, is the elementary course. And the devotees are all more advanced than that. Mam chayo vyabhacharena bhakti yogena sevate sagunan samati chaitan brahmabhuyaya kopate. But that's not what I was thinking of. What was I thinking of? The Brahmabhuta prasanatman nashochati nakankshati samasarveshu bhuteshu mad bhaktim labhate para. In the liberated stage, Brahmabhuta stage, one understands that he's spirit soul. He becomes free from hankering and lamenting. He sees all with an equal eye. And once he reaches that stage, then he can go on and take up Krishna Bhakti. So anyone who's taken to Krishna Bhakti is understood to be better than the liberated person. So that's one angle of vision. From another point of view, one should try to take direction from an advanced devotee. This is a principle also mentioned in the Nectar of Devotion. One should try to associate with devotees who are considered more advanced. There are devotees who are have Kamala Shraddha, very weak and pliable faith, and who are not very conversant with the Shastras. Then there are devotees whose faith is more strong and who are conversant with the conclusions of Vaishnava Siddhanta. And then still higher are those who have unshakable faith and whose knowledge of the scriptures is very strong and solid. So particularly, we should try to take guidance from those who are advanced. Shrushrayo, Bhajana Vigyam, Ananyamanya, Indari Shunna, Kritamipsita Sangha Labdva. We should all offer respects to all devotees, but we should be keen to associate with those who are expert in devotional service and whose hearts are freed from the tendency to criticize others and from all sorts of other anarthas. Now there's more in the chat box. Let's expand the chat box and see what's there. Prabhin says, so considering any devotee who's practicing Krishna consciousness, can they be considered liberated and hence fit to act as Siksha Guru? Yes, from one point of view, our devotees are going out and they're giving amazing instructions to the conditioned souls. These conditioned souls are bouncing around from one from one disaster to another. And they meet a devotee, and the devotee is engaged in the service of the spiritual master. He's distributing books, he's chanting Hare Krishna, he's trying to spread Krishna consciousness, and he gives some instruction. Even if it's just chant Hare Krishna, you're not this body. Life is meant for spiritual realization. He's coming from the liberated platform. He's given up intoxicants, gambling, meat eating, illicit sex. He's chanting the holy name of the Lord. So he's definitely fit to give instructions. He's definitely fit to give instructions. Now, as we go along, we may look to devotees who are particularly advanced, particularly expert, who are who've jettisoned more of the material, what would you say? Illusions and material aspirations, and seek a person who's advanced, more advanced. But even the neophytes can give dramatically valuable instructions for the conditioned souls. Particularly, one kind of Shiksha Guru is called Vartma Pradarshaka Guru, the Guru who shows the way, who first points us in the right direction. That's a kind of Shiksha Guru. Of course, that person may not continue in that role. Prabhupada gave the example of Narendranath Mullik, who was his friend in his youth, and who canvassed him to come and meet Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. So he pointed him in the right direction. But then Narendranath didn't continue his interest, and Srila Prabhupada dedicated his whole life. So Srila Prabhupada didn't need to go back to Narendranath and say, what do I do now? What do I do now? What's your advice? But still, he performed that function of dragging Srila Prabhupada to meet Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. I was just reading today a letter from Satyaraj Prabhu. I don't think it's confidential. How he was saying that Madhusudan Prabhu, my dear god brother who just left this world, had served as his Shiksha Guru. He'd met Satyaraj. He'd met Satyaraj and given him some strong instructions, persuaded him that he should read Srila Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita and not any other, and that he should come to the temple. And so Satyaraj did. And as he himself has said, the rest is history. So we may think that these are ordinary devotees, the devotees around us, but what potency they have to free the conditioned souls from lifetimes and lifetimes of bad association and bad advice. And if those devotees, what is that? Yes, and if those devotees take up the regulative principles and become initiated and follow strictly, then how much more potency they have. And if there are devotees who come to the highest platform, then they're super excellent. Shara asks, do we have any responsibility to tell these people that maybe bad association for us about Krishna? Oh, do we have any responsibility to tell these people that may be bad association for us about Krishna? Or should we just keep our distance, like with an old friend or something? Yes, we try to bring people. Jayadvaita Swami Krishna Upadesh. Whoever you meet, wherever you go, speak to them something about Krishna. So that is our responsibility. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has asked us to do that. But we're also cautioned not to preach the glories of the name to the unfaithful. So sometimes our old friends and relatives aren't the best candidates. They scoff at the notion of devotional service, or they're simply not interested, or they're antagonistic. So under those circumstances, we may not. We may go on to others who are more receptive. But still, the devotees are so keen. That example is there. With Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, his brother-in-law, what was his name?
Gopinathacharya.
Gopinathacharya. Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya was like a hard-boiled impersonalist. He just wouldn't want to hear. And he'd have so many arguments. He was very learned. He was a Shastri. So, but still, that Gopinathacharya was canvassing. And finally, by the desire of Gopinathacharya, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya was blessed by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and became an intimate associate of the Lord. So we try to help everyone as far as we can. But if someone's antagonistic, uninterested, then just to go on and on instructing them may not be very helpful. Still, we try to give them prasadam, expose them to the chanting of Hare Krishna, give them some good instruction. But we may keep our distance if they're exceedingly materialistic. One has to judge. How capable am I? How toxic are they? We should be careful. Tulsi Priya, Srila Prabhupada told the following story to illustrate how one may mix with non-devotees and yet keep one's devotional integrity. Very good story. Once a crocodile invited a monkey in a tree to come and ride on his back. The foolish monkey jumped down from the tree and soon found himself clinging to the crocodile's back in the middle of the river. The monkey asked, "Where are we going?" Crocodile replied, "I'm going to take you home, where my wife will cut out your heart and we will eat it for lunch." The monkey replied, "Oh, but I left my heart back on the shore in the tree. Will you please let me get it?" The crocodile thought this was a good proposal and allowed the monkey to touch shore. But the monkey jumped into its tree and refused to accept further invitations from the crocodile. The moral of this story is you may associate with the non-devotee, but don't give him your heart. Jai. Anything else here? Vijay Krishna. Related to avoid bad company and associate only with devotees. If we need to differentiate between devotees and non-devotees, in what measure could this behavior be categorized as hate behavior, rising to become condemned by members of society in general who have no better than a poor fund of knowledge? How to deal with such kind of condemnation that may happen from people being offended? Certainly it's not hate behavior, it's actually love behavior or benedictory behavior. When we avoid the association of those who are too materialistic, we do them a favor. This is the second-class devotee. The third-class devotee isn't interested in others, he's just interested in himself and Krishna. But the second-class devotee is interested in balisheshu, the childish or inexperienced materialistic persons, the innocent persons who just don't get it, they don't understand, or they haven't heard, or they're missing Krishna consciousness. So he's very keen to give them the opportunity. But what is that? Those who are envious, he avoids. Prema Maitri, there it is. Ishre Tarani Adhineshu, Balisheshu Dvishatsuja. Ishara is the personality of Godhead, and Adhineshu, Tadadineshu are his devotees. And Balisheshu, the innocent, and Rishatsu, the envious. Prema Maitri Kripo Peksha Ya Karoti Samadhyamaha. He behaves with them in different ways. This is a figure of speech, by the way. Anyway, I won't get into that. But prema means he has love for the Lord. And maitri, friendship for the devotees. And kripa, mercy for the innocent. And upeksha, upeksha means disregard. So his disregard for the non-devotees is a favor for them. By disregarding them, he prevents them from committing offenses, from scoffing at devotional service, from insulting the devotee. So to leave them alone is a kindness to them. It's not hatred. It's not hatred. It's just, we can't do anything for you. In medicine, they have, what is it called? Triage. When there's some disaster or epidemic or what have you, then so many patients come into the hospital all at once. They're all just flooding in. And the doctors have to make decisions. This person we're not going to treat because he doesn't need treatment. This person we're going to treat very urgently. Maybe we can save it. This person's too far gone, nothing we can do. That kind of discrimination is there. It's not that the doctor hates the patient that he can't save, but he knows nothing I can do for this poor fellow. Nothing I can do for this poor fellow. So the devotee also, on the second class platform, thinks that way, that these envious persons, better that I just not, what's the word, beat the bushes and stir up the tigers. Let them be. Let them be. And let me focus on those who are innocent, Bali Sheshu, who are like innocent children. Because they may take to it, they can really benefit. And I'll develop friendship with the devotees so I can serve them and get the benefit of their association. So in this way, the Madhyamadikari discriminates. In the Nectar of Instruction also, Srila Rupa Goswami explains the same thing. The devotee discriminates. It's not that everyone's on the same level, but the Uttamadikari, his super realization is that everyone's engaged in the service of the Lord. But we can't imitate the Uttamadikaris. Prabhupada said we should try to come to the Madhyam platform. Anything else?
Question.
Mm-hmm.
Is this ability to see everyone a servant of Krishna, is this something that, I don't know if I'm asking the question right, or if, is it knowledge, or is it a side effect of prema, that you have so much love for Krishna that you just automatically see everyone as part and parcel and that they're all serving Krishna? Or is it something that you understand intellectually that
No, it's more than intellectual understanding. The devotees who's on the Uttamadikari platform, he sees that.
Mm-hmm.
He sees that. Of course, what is that? Jnana Vairagya Yuktaya Pashyantya. So he's fortified with knowledge, but it's not just knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
Vigyan.
Mm-hmm.
It's realization. How does he have such realization? Because he has such deep love for Krishna. Even the ordinary well-established devotee doesn't have this kind of realization. But the highest devotees, they see everyone is engaged in Krishna's service. Everyone is engaged in Krishna's service. The gopis were seeing, they were talking to all the residents of the Vrindavan forest, seeing them all as being engaged in Krishna's service, all of them being in various kinds of ecstasy in relationship to Krishna. Of course, in Vrindavan forest, everyone is, but still their expressions reflect the heart of a perfect devotee who sees that everyone's engaged, even the animals, even the trees, even the bees are somehow engaged in Krishna's service. Ekachakra says, from Panchatattva, Prabhu. His Holiness Jayadvaita Swami tells the story of his mother, who outwardly was seemingly disinterested in his devotional practices. To make a long story short, unbeknownst to him, she had been keeping clippings from newspapers of her son's preaching, had been reading the books he sent her, and at the end of her life, called and asked him if she could go to Vrindavan. As I recall, Maharaj was called at night and said he would call her back in the morning. When he did, he found out she'd passed away and that she'd been keeping this extraordinary meditation on her son and his books and the books he sent her. Sometimes we just don't even know what kind of effect our association has on others. Yes, it's true. We don't realize how much it affects people. How much it affects people. We may think, I didn't do anything. I couldn't distribute any books. I couldn't convince anyone of anything. But if we go on speaking about Krishna and trying our best to engage others in the service of Krishna, there can be wonderful results. And even if there are no tangible results, Krishna appreciates this person is speaking about me. There may be results or no results, but just that the devotee is engaged in that way pleases Krishna. And when Krishna is pleased, then our life is successful. Now, let me just see where we stand. I know there's more.
I want to ask a question.
Yes.
So about this tendency of criticizing others, I see a devotees for a long time, but all of a sudden they start criticizing, and this may continue like 2, 3, 5 years. It's kind of difficult for them to give up there, to appreciate and be grateful for what they see from the same people they're criticizing. So how to avoid that, where it comes from.
Sometimes we see that there are people who've been devotees for quite a number of years, but they have this tendency to criticize other devotees, or they suddenly develop it all of a sudden appears that they're doing that. So where does this come from, and what should we do about it? It comes from deep within the heart, where envy is there. What is that? Jayadvaita Swami, Dvandvamohena Bharata, Sarvabhutani Sammohan, Sargayanti Parantapa. Everyone is bewildered by these dualities of Ichcha, material desires, and envy. This envy is always lurking. Tendency to don't want others to be more advanced than we are, or to have something that we don't have. We become envious. That Duryodhana, he went to the palace of the Pandavas, and he was simply envious. What opulence they have, how beautiful their queen is, how they've made this Indraprastha prosperous, how Krishna's queens are living in the palace with Krishna, and how beautiful those queens are. It's not just that I don't have them, but somebody else does. It's intolerable. It's not just that I'm dull, but someone is smart. I don't have beauty, but that person has it. I'm not detached, but that person is. We're envious. And it begins with envy of Krishna. Why should Krishna be the controller? Why should Krishna be the enjoyer? So these things can develop. They're like weeds. We're pouring the water of hearing and chanting. But we have to be careful also, attentive to pull out the weeds. These weeds of envy, of duplicity, of lust, and so on. We strenuously have to try to pull those out. And they lurk deep in the heart because we've been conditioned since time immemorial. So we're sometimes surprised, where did this come from? All of a sudden I realize I'm just criticizing. That, rather than say something good, I have to criticize, I have to find fault, because that means Now, since I found the fault, I must be in a better position. I know what they don't know. I have what they don't have. I have this opulence of being right when they're wrong, of being on when they're off. So we need to be very careful about that. This offenses to devotees are the mad elephant offense. One should be very careful not to offend devotees. One has to be very careful about social media, which by its very nature has been observed even by the karmis to foster a combative spirit, and a spirit in which one takes pleasure by criticizing others or seeing others criticized. We need to be careful about that. And internet or no internet, we need to be careful that we don't needlessly criticize devotees, and rather that we serve devotees, that we appreciate devotees. An antidote for envy is to appreciate how wonderful the devotees are. Yovanananda asks if being negative is the same category as being envious. No, not necessarily. We may be negative about something because it deserves to be looked upon negatively. We're negative about gambling, intoxicants, meat eating, illicit sex. We're not envious. Oh, I wish I could have some meat. I wish I could have illicit sex. I wish I could gamble. It's not that. We're negative. These things are bad. We're not fools that we have to look at everything as well. If you like it, then it must be good for you. No, this is, we're negative. And Krishna himself, Namam Duskritana Mudha, so many negative things Krishna says. But we should be very careful. Negativity toward used in preaching, especially regarding the futility and painfulness of material life, is very good. But if we start relishing, finding faults with devotees, then we're in a seriously diseased condition, and we need to do something. I hope that's okay. All right, so we can stop here, and thank you all for your kind association. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Thank you, Maharaj. Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna. Thank you.
Hare Krishna,
Thank you, Gurudev. Thank you.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Maharaj. We love you.
Maharaj,
Thank you, Apurva Prabhu. We love Apurva.
No.
Hare Krishna.
Haribol.
All right. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
No.
It's beautiful.
Hare Hare.